Let's dive right into this explainer because today we are unpacking a genuinely epic historical mystery. We're talking about a missing 150 years in history. We're going to look at the legend of Maharaja Suheldev, the Battle of Bahraich, and a massive subcontinent-shaping clash of empires that somehow got swept totally under the rug in our modern history. Right off the bat, the source material throws this fascinating question at us. If you flip through standard modern history textbooks, there is this sudden, completely unexplained 150-year gap in North India. It's this weird era where foreign invasions just inexplicably stopped. So what caused this sudden halt? And who was actually defending the subcontinent during this void? Well, to figure that out, we have to rewind a bit. To understand this missing era, we first need to look at the devastating invasions led by Mahmud Ghaznavi. Starting right around the year 1000 AD, Ghaznavi started launching these highly calculated raids into India. First, it was early raids in Punjab. Then, in 1001 AD, came the strategic defeat of the Hindu Shahi king Jayapala. And Ghaznavi's tactic here was absolutely brutal, but it worked. He'd launch a sudden attack, loot the immense wealth of these smaller kingdoms, and then just retreat back to Ghazni before anyone could even organize a counterattack. But what's truly staggering is how things escalated in 1025 AD. Ghaznavi marched on the sacred Somnath temple in Gujarat, and he brought a highly trained force of over 30,000 soldiers with him. The text makes it clear, this wasn't just a raiding party. This was a massive horde organized for absolute destruction, lured in by these crazy reports that the wealth of Somnath could literally cover Ghazni in gold. Now, when Ghaznavi's forces showed up at the temple gates, they didn't just walk in. They were met by a fierce contingent of Rajput defenders. Historical accounts tell us these warriors stood their ground with this ultimate, chilling vow: death is acceptable, but not defeat. Knowing they were massively outnumbered by those 30,000 invaders, they fought relentlessly. Their battle cries echoed through the courtyard until literally the very last man fell on the temple steps. Despite that incredible sacrifice, the temple was ultimately breached. And the aftermath? It was horrific. Thousands were killed. The temple's unimaginable wealth, we're talking gold, silver, ancient idols, all of it was loaded onto hundreds of camels and shipped back to Ghazni. But perhaps most devastatingly for the local people, the sacred Shiva Lingam, which was this profound symbol of their faith, was shattered. So this massive tragedy sets the stage for our next key figure, Syed Salar Masud. He was Ghaznavi's young, incredibly ambitious nephew. While everyone else back in Ghazni was busy celebrating all that looted wealth from Somnath, this 16-year-old was getting restless. He didn't want to just be known as Ghaznavi's nephew, you know? He wanted to carve out his own violent legacy and be the next great conqueror of the Indian subcontinent. Driven by the promise of endless wealth and this burning desire to outdo his uncle, Masud put together a terrifying force. We are talking about a staggering 100,000 soldiers. He instilled his own intense fervor into them, and they began their march toward India, entirely confident that absolutely no one could stand in their way. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, how on earth could an invading army of 100,000 soldiers just march right in? Well, it all comes down to geopolitical fractures. Think about the ancient Mauryan era, right? They successfully repelled massive threats because they were unified under a single leader. But post-Harshavardhana India, it was completely isolated into these smaller divided kingdoms. If one kingdom got attacked, the neighbors just didn't intervene. It was every man for himself, which left individual regions incredibly vulnerable to these massive concentrated invasions. And Masud took ruthless advantage of that division. His massive force moved like a literal flood. First, they ravaged Punjab, easily overpowering the valiant but totally outnumbered forces of Arjan Singh. Second, they swept right through Rajputana, where again, brave but isolated warriors were just crushed by sheer numbers. Finally, leaving this massive trail of dust and destruction, Masud's army reached the borders of Bahraich in modern-day Uttar Pradesh. For Masud, he figured this was just going to be another easy victory. But that is exactly where he met Maharaja Suheldev Pasi. Suheldev was a visionary leader, and he instantly recognized the fatal flaw in India's defense. He saw that fighting this colossal enemy in isolation was essentially a death sentence. His own army couldn't possibly take on a force of 100,000 alone. So he knew the only way to survive was to do something that literally hadn't been done in centuries: unite those fractured kingdoms. Suheldev immediately sent out urgent messengers to every neighboring ruler with this chilling rallying cry. He told them, if we don't wake up today, tomorrow our existence will be erased. He didn't sugarcoat it. He bluntly warned them that just hiding in their forts would only guarantee that they were next on the chopping block. It was a massive wake-up call, and it ignited this fierce sense of national pride and collective survival. And the response? It was completely unprecedented. For the first time since the era of King Harshavardhana, they actually achieved incredible unity. 21 Pahari kings answered the call. And even more remarkably, they secured the legendary support of Raja Bhoj, a ruler who was famous for his martial prowess. All of these leaders looked at the bigger picture, set aside their bitter, long-standing rivalries, and dusted off their weapons to form one single, united front for the nation. This was the ultimate turning point, just based on the sheer shift in numbers. When news of this alliance reached Salar Masud, he was in for a rude awakening. His force of 100,000, the one he thought was totally invincible, was suddenly staring down an unstoppable, unified Indian coalition of 300,000 warriors. These were men drawn from across Punjab, Malwa, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. Suddenly, the invaders were the ones completely outnumbered by a coalition fiercely defending their homeland. The Battle of Bahraich itself was an absolute masterclass in tactical warfare. It kicked off with Maharaja Suheldev personally leading a brutal frontal assault. He charged directly into enemy lines on horseback, causing immediate, absolute chaos among Masud's ranks. Then, while they were distracted by that, the renowned Raja Bhoj rapidly flanked the invaders from the north with his massive forces. This brilliant maneuver resulted in the complete and total encirclement of Masud's army. The battle quickly reached a fever pitch. Amidst all the clashing swords and the sheer chaos of his massive trap, we hit the climax. Raja Bhoj personally struck down Salar Masud. With their commander dead, the invading army's morale just completely collapsed. They tried to flee into the surrounding forests, but the united Indian forces ruthlessly pursued them. According to historical texts, the invading army was entirely decimated. 0 survivors. The impact of this staggering victory honestly cannot be overstated. Here is exactly why this matters so much to our broader understanding of history. It resulted in an incredible 150 years of absolute peace in North India. For a century and a half, no foreign invader dared to cross into the region. The sheer totality of that defeat served as a terrifying deterrent. It proved that when the region was united, it was an absolute, impenetrable fortress. But here is the wild part. As the source material emphasizes, standard history textbooks basically skip right over this massive victory. The educational narrative frequently just jumps from Mahmud Ghaznavi straight over to later invaders like Muhammad Ghori. The epic story of Maharaja Suheldev, Raja Bhoj, and this massive coalition that actually secured a century and a half of peace, it's almost entirely omitted from mainstream education. The source argues that this history was intentionally obscured by later narratives, which leaves us with a really provocative final thought to chew on. If a united front successfully repelled a massive invasion and secured a century and a half of peace, why was the story of these defending heroes hidden from us? It really challenges us to look deeper into where our historical knowledge comes from, and it makes you wonder what other incredible stories of unity and resilience are just waiting to be rediscovered.